Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below, the purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see here at Watchbox Reviews. Email me at tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today we're discussing a 2004 Platinum limited edition of 150 pieces. This is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Amvox R Alarm, part of the Amvox 1 family. All of these watches were part of a separate model line established in 2004 when Jaeger-LeCoultre and Aston Martin agreed to a 10-year branding exercise in which JLC would create Aston Martin themed timepieces. This was the follow-up to the period from 1920s to the 1990s when Jaeger instruments were featured on the dashboard of Aston Martin vehicles. So this was no shotgun marriage. There's a lot of history. The timepiece, 44 millimeters in diameter, is 2 millimeters larger than the standard Amvox 1 wrist alarm. As you can see, the timepiece, individually numbered 91 out of 150, measures 15.6 millimeters thick, 49 millimeters lug-to-lug, and it features a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. We'll throw it on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist before looking at the hardware and the software. As you can see, the watch sits fairly low on the wrist for its thickness. A lot of the height is the cambered sapphire, and we'll talk about that box section sapphire in a moment. But at under 50 millimeters lug-to-lug, the watch wears well on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters in circumference, and the lugs are spare, short cropped, and tightly downturned, meaning the watch almost wears like a 44 millimeter circle on the wrist, but all in platinum. You really do feel the mass. It's a hefty and substantial watch. The timepiece features a solid case back, so you're getting a lot of extra platinum here. It feels heavier than its size would suggest. You have a lovely Bridge of Weir leather strap, the same leather used in Aston Martin vehicles. Black calfskin bolstered down the center with a contrasting stitch, and you can see curved spring bars are used to allow close drilling so that the strap can pull straight down around the wrist despite being set close to the case for a closely coupled integrated look. Now on the underside you can see this is a brand new Jaeger-LeCoultre factory strap, so you will have the pleasure of gouging it and crimping it. You will do so with this, a white gold double deployant clasp. This is Jaeger-LeCoultre's third generation deployant clasp, for those of you who are keeping score, and the double deployant in white gold makes it a better match for a small wrist than the previous single fold. Rolling back to the case, you can see this is the first obvious reference to the definitive Polaris 68 diving alarm. You have these beveled lugs squared off on their ends with a thin mid case, and then this box section sapphire that is designed to evoke the plexiglass of the Polaris 68. This watch is simultaneously a tribute to Jaeger dashboard instruments, speedometers, and tachometers, and a tribute to the Polaris 68. You can see the Polaris 68's triple crown profile, and as with the original, there's even a crown to control a bidirectional rotating internal bezel that you can line up with the Calypso-style minute hand for an impromptu 0 to 60 minute timer. So in a way, you have a literal chronograph, or a graphical display of the passage of time, chronos. Now the watch also features an alarm. It is a wrist alarm like the original Polaris, and I'm going to fire it up. It uses caliber 918, which features a separate hanging gong. As a result, it has a wonderful singing, resonant, loud, sustained, musical, lyrical voice to it. You will hear that in a moment. I didn't wind it all the way because it'll go for about 20 seconds if you let it go all the way. The nice thing about the watch is it is more than loud enough to wake you up for a red-eye flight, even if you're wearing earplugs. It's the ultimate travel companion, in my opinion. Now, the dial of the Platinum model, there was also a 500-piece titanium edition. You'll note how the individual numbering plate in Platinum is fixed by external bolts. I love that refinement. But the dial itself is designed to echo both the Polaris 68 in the form of those Calypso-style hands, which were a late production Polaris edition, rarely made but well remembered, and a bit controversial too. The timepiece featuring a Polaris-style font, as well as that internal rotating bezel, but you'll note that the radial array of the numerals and the smaller intermediate numerals, along with the open swath at the bottom of the watch, recalls the dashboard instruments made by Jaeger for Aston Martin. So it is simultaneously a Polaris reference, but also a dashboard clock, tachometer, and speedometer reference. There are a few well-chosen yellow highlights, and you can see how the center of the dial is calibrated, the better to allow the setting of the alarm. And there is an inverse hobnail, that is, rather than raised hobnails on a Royal Oak, there are inverse or dimple style hobnails on the center. You'll also note that the numerals themselves are substantially raised from the matte black outer dial, so this is a watch absolutely rife with nuance. Under the case back, which again is the only overt Aston Martin branding on the whole watch, you see 14 holes. The Polaris 68 included 16 holes, but again, this is a reference, not a literal copy or re-edition. The solid case back in platinum rather than a sapphire means this watch is much heavier than if it had a sapphire case back. It also provides a resonator that gives the watch a more pronounced voice. Now, the timepiece features caliber 918. It debuted in the early 1980s. It's a JLC manufacturer automatic, 27 joules, 45-hour power reserve, bidirectional winding. It beats away at 28,800 vibrations per hour, and it features a stop seconds function. It's 50 meters water resistant, and there is a semi-quick set where you back the hour hand through midnight from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. repeatedly to index the date, and that's how the quick set system works for the date. This is a watch that is full of history. Jaeger-LeCoultre, Jaeger Instruments, and of course Aston Martin. So if you're a car fan or just a fan of great timepiece design, email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for full details. And I'm back with the Amvox R-Alarm, the dashboard by night.